Hello everyone, I hope you've had a good week. My name is Jake and my channel is Jake Trades and Invests, where I talk about the price of where the markets have headed as well as where I think price may be headed. And I'm going to do my weekly analysis here of the top commodities and indices, and we'll go ahead and jump right into our charts and get started. So as always, we'll start here with gold. Gold has been pulling back a little bit this week. Ended the week kind of consolidating for the last couple of days here. Um, we hit an all-time high of just over 3,500 before pulling back, which is something I talked about last week, where we had quite a bit of momentum, and I figured we were gonna get up here and kind of pause and pull back a little bit, kind of expected as the price continues to move higher. But we're still trending above the moving averages. There's still a lot of buying going on when the price pulls back, so I don't expect much difference here. It's possible price could come on back down towards maybe 3,200 and let the moving averages catch up, or it'll kind of hang around the 3,300 level and just consolidate before heading higher. But again, for the time being, gold is heading upwards, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. As for silver, we had a pretty strong week the last couple of weeks where we've pushed back up from the $28, $29 level over the last few weeks, pushed back up into the $33 range. Again, like gold, I think silver may consolidate here for a day or two, maybe into the coming week before heading higher, but I think silver also looks good to continue higher in the short to medium term. As for platinum, kind of following along with silver, we sold off a couple of weeks ago when the markets were kind of going crazy with all the tariff talks, and we quickly rebounded back off of our support zone in that $900 range. And right now we're consolidating around $980. And so I think for the weeks coming up, I think price will continue to head higher as long as gold and silver continue to head higher. Platinum looks good to continue up as well. Copper, same thing as the other metals so far. We sold off a couple of weeks ago and then quickly rebounded back up, and we're now sitting around 484, 485 in our previous resistance zone. We're back above the moving averages, and those moving averages are turning higher, so I think copper looks good to continue its run to the upside, potentially head back towards the all-time highs here of around 537. Crude oil looks like it's consolidating this week. We're still below our old support zone that goes back a couple of years, and we're still below the moving averages. So it's likely price will continue up back towards 66, which is what I talked about last week. What's going to be key for oil is what it does when it gets to that range. So once it reaches around 66 or $67, I want to see what price does. Does it break through this range? Does it kind of consolidate? Does it reject? That $66 level to 67, 68, somewhere in there, I think is going to be a key level to watch to see how the price reacts going into this week and maybe even 2 weeks out, depending on how quickly it returns to that level. For natural gas, again, we're still consolidating just below $3. Been talking about that for a couple of weeks now. Seems like a likely area for natural gas to hold as long as we stay around this $2.80 to $3 range. I think natural gas still looks good for a buy in the short to medium term. It looks like momentum has started to slow heading into that dollar range and support zone here, where we were selling off pretty quickly, and then the candles started to get a little smaller and momentum slowed, like I said. So I'm thinking this might be a good time to buy natural gas, at least for a small bounce back up towards the 330, 340 range until it kind of reaches these moving averages here. So that's my opinion on natural gas right now. And so let's see how that plays out in the next week or two. Moving over to the S&P 500, we've continued to bounce back this week, which is a good sign. We still have a little bit more to go in this gap to get back up around 5,600. So it's likely that this week we'll push up into that range and close this gap from a few weeks ago. where the market's really sold off. The thing to watch though is once we get up to that level, you know, is the price going to continue to climb? Will the momentum stay behind it, or will we close this gap and pull back? Because we now have a gap down here around 5,300 from earlier in the week where we gapped up. So it's possible we get a couple more weeks of chopping around and consolidation. I'm interested to see what happens as the price gets around 5,600. I think it may take a little more time to consolidate and build a base down in this range here from the last couple of weeks where price has just been all over the place. So I'm not convinced yet that price is ready to head back towards all-time highs. We are getting the moving averages crossing each other to the downside, but they are currently turning kind of sideways here. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, I think, to see how price reacts as it gets up towards those moving averages and closes the gap around 5,600. As for the Nasdaq, kind of the same thing. We have closed all of the gaps from a couple of weeks ago. The price is around the 19,500 level right now, hanging around the moving averages. We might see a little more upside as well before pulling back, you know, one or two more times to consolidate. We do have this gap here around 18,300. So it's likely that we may see some pullbacks in the coming weeks to fill that gap as well, especially if more news comes out around tariffs and things like that. There's just a lot of news flying around that's causing panic in the markets. So it's still a time to kind of wait on the sidelines, I think, and watch these markets unfold and wait for a really good, solid opportunity once prices seem to stabilize a little bit. But that's what I'm thinking is going to happen with the Nasdaq in the coming weeks. As for the Dow, we've still got some gaps overhead to fill. The Dow looks good to push higher back towards 41,000. The gap to fill is around 41,750 or so, which would coincide with around the 200 moving average that we're seeing on the screen here. So it's possible if the other indices are pushing higher into this week, the Dow may continue to push up to close that gap. But again, we've got another gap that formed this week towards the downside here around 39,200-ish. So it's possible we see the price come up and then fall back to fill the gap. So it's just something to keep an eye on. The Dow is chopping around just like the S&P and the Nasdaq. So again, right now seems like a good time to sit on the sidelines and wait for things to kind of settle down and let price show us which direction it wants to head in. As for the Russell, doesn't seem to be chopping around as much as the other indices. We are looking bullish to, again, head back towards the $2,000 range, which would close the gap that we had from a couple of weeks ago, much like the other indices. That coincides with the 50 EMA here overhead. So likely a place where the price will head into this week, and then a high probability, in my opinion, that we're going to pull back down towards the 1900 level to close the gap that formed earlier in the week this week. And it's possible if the momentum holds, we'll come back towards 1800 and retest our support zone that has been forming for quite some time. Over the last few years, it's been a pretty strong support level. So that's my opinion on what I think the Russell's going to do. I think for this week, for a very short-term trade, it looks good to head higher to close the gap around 2,000. But from there, I would be interested to wait and see what the price is going to do around that $2,000 level. And lastly here, we'll finish with Bitcoin. Bitcoin has had another strong week this week. We've been talking the last couple of weeks of how the momentum was behind Bitcoin and looked like it was going to head towards breaking out and continue higher, and that's been the case. So at the moment, it looks like this could be an area where Bitcoin pauses and maybe consolidates a little bit since we've had so much momentum. It's possible we'll pull back down and kind of retest this zone here now that we've gotten back above it. It's likely if we consolidate, it'll give the moving averages a chance to catch up and potentially form another launching point from here. But for now, it looks like Bitcoin wants to head higher, especially as the dollar's weakening. Gold and Bitcoin seem to be alternatives to the dollar. So I think that's kind of what's driving the Bitcoin market right now. And that's all I have for you this week. I appreciate anyone that has tuned in. As always, please give a like and a subscribe if you find this information valuable. Leave a comment. I appreciate anyone that's willing to share their opinion. I do check for the comments. So again, please like, subscribe, comment, check out last week's video, and I will see you again next week. Thanks.